The following interview was recorded at the National Youth at-Risk Conference in Savannah, Georgia. Hey everybody, welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
LaMarr, Darnell Shields.
Hey Sound Bombing community, this is me, your man Dr. LaMarr Darnell Shields. I am back again. I am at the National Youth at-Risk Conference, and I've been coming to this conference for about 15 years now as a facilitator, and every so often some new people swing into the building that we meet in other places who is doing some amazing work. And one of those beautiful people is sitting right across from me. I got a chance to interview her partner, Jeffrey, a while ago. And I promised myself, I don't know if I promised her, that I wanted to get her on the show. But I knew it would be very unique because she's a different type of spirit. She's a New Yorker. She has an acting background. So I had to do this with her in a different space. And you're not on the telephone. Who am I talking about? Julia Gabor, who is the mindful co-founder of Kid Grit. She is a world-renowned traveler, a youth service provider. She's a change agent. She does have an acting background. She's going to talk about that, all the great things that she's doing. She's making faces at me right now. But I'm so glad that she's here, always rocking the dope Kid Grit gear. I'm a little jealous. So Julia, welcome to Sound Bombing. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. I can't contain myself. That's the kind of person I am.
So it's funny. I told her to stop. You know, most of the women that come on the show, when we have a table there, I don't know why you all have your hand. You should see it. Julia has her hand on her hips moving around. You can be free. Just don't hit the doggone microphone. So welcome to Savannah. Welcome to the National Youth at-Risk Conference. What are your thoughts about being here? And then I know you're going to be presenting tomorrow. So first of all, what are your first thoughts?
Well, it's super exciting. I always think that the people in Georgia are the nicest people I ever met in my life. I have been to this conference over 15 years ago.
So you've been here before.
When I worked with the Tiger Woods Foundation, doing some character education curriculum. So it's been a long time. And when you and I saw each other at another conference and you said, you all need to be down here, I was like, I forgot about that conference. And you're right. I mean, this is a perfect fit for what we're doing, so we're really excited.
So I know you haven't presented yet, but just talk about some of the people that you've come in contact with thus far, the type of spirit, the energy that's here. I know many of us are dealing with this whole virus that's taking place across the country, and conferences are being canceled, but let's talk about the spirit that you feel in this space.
I feel like people are really excited. They're grateful. You know, they're coming here looking for resources. There are a lot of people who are doing the work, in our space, like the youth development work, where kids are looking for solutions. They don't know how to ask for them. They don't have their own resources. And these are social workers. These are nonprofit organizations that are looking for solutions to help kids become successful or get out of high trauma situations. So it feels very positive and energetic because there's a need, and like you're in your company and ours, we have solutions for them. So it's pretty exciting to be in a place where you're wanted.
So we're going to talk about some of the solutions that you all are rolling out with Kid Grit. But before we get into that, I want to get into the Julia mind. Before you start doing this work, and when I met you, I'm like, do you have a theater background? Not because she's like a drama queen. I'm not talking about that. But just her energy is infectious. Tell me tell our listeners about who you are and your story before you got to start doing this work.
Thank you for asking. I'm pretty interesting. So
let me just tell you something about that word. That word interesting has always been interesting to me. Like, for example, let's just say you and I were about to go out and your best friend says, I really like LaMarr. He's very interesting. Like that word interesting is always interesting to me. So when you say you have an interesting background, explain what that means.
Oh,
sir.
that's a good question. I would say different.
Okay.
You know, people are always kind of like surprised when they hear how I grew up, where I grew up, the history of my parents and the way that they raised me. So people don't believe a lot of the stories I tell them about the way I grew up. So I always say, oh, I have an interesting background.
So how did you grow up? What makes it interesting?
I grew up in the lower part of Manhattan in the 1970s. And my parents divorced. Both of them were artists. So if you know anything about...
You had two artists in the 70s, New York. Did you hang out at Greenwich Village a lot?
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
You grew up in the
Lower
village.
East Side.
Lower East Side.
We call it the LES. If
Okay.
you're from any of your listeners from there, they'll be like, oh, she knows, right? So I'm from the LES. My father was a freelance writer, and my mother was a director and an acting teacher. So when they divorced, I was in public school. I was the kid who had a bag packed every weekend, going on a city bus at 6 years old from one side of town to the other, packing my own bags, taking care of myself. And if you look around today, you don't see kids by themselves on public transportation at 6 years old. So that's the first time people go, oh man, like wow.
Which was natural to you. Like me
Yes.
growing up in Chicago, seeing a kid walking down the street, 7, 8 years old, it's not a big, like I wouldn't send my son to the store, hey, go to the corner store and pick
Not
up
anymore.
some Now Laters and some Skittles and
right.
some Doritos.
Yeah.
So it's a different time. So you
It
grew
is
up
a
during that
different
time.
And it was actually right before the kidnapping or the missing kid, Eitan Pates, got.
Oh yeah, that was a big thing in New York.
He
yeah.
was in my nursery school, so we know his family. Like that's where I grew up in Soho, Greenwich Village, Lower East Side. Okay, so also when I was about 6 years old, my father had a showingly big addiction to alcohol, and he was a little bit distant from raising a child. And at the same time, my mother had been given a grant from the government called CETA, where it was teaching arts in prisons. And she did a theater piece with the inmates in a state penitentiary in New York, and she fell in love with one of the inmates. And when he came out, he came and lived with us.
Like she literally fell in love. Like
No, he was like my father. So he was a brother from Harlem with gold chain.
I like how when she
picking
said
hair.
the brother, y'all should see how she pumped her fist for those that can't see the visual.
Like a brother. But he had long pinky nail, a gold chain, silk shirt, picking hair, and he used to cornrow my hair. I used to roll up one of my leg sleeves, and I would like hop down the street with him. Like he was everything.
So maybe that's
to
what
me.
LL got. The LL used to roll that one sleeve
Yeah,
up.
the
New
East
York.
Coast,
East Coast, yeah.
And so, in the meantime, my father was in a different circle in publishing and met a woman who he fell in love with that was in a arranged marriage because there was a lot of financial backings for both of these people in the 60s, and they didn't really love each other, so they decided in the 70s to have an open marriage, and they weren't going to get a divorce.
So why do I feel like I'm listening to like a lifetime, like I'm waiting for Oprah to come out, this is
You
a
asked me
lifetime
this story.
Hallmark. That is amazing.
Well, it gets better.
And this is your upbringing. Keep
Yes,
going.
so the woman who he was in love with, she didn't really like kids. She was from England. She had a British accent. So lots of money, British accent, and she didn't like kids. So when she would come visit to New York, she said, you know, in your one-bedroom apartment, to my father, why don't we rent the apartment next door, give her a set of keys.
Her is
So-
the you.
Yes.
You're the her.
Yes,
Okay,
That's
okay.
what the girlfriend said. She said, let's get Julia in the other apartment so that we don't have to be around her, so they could carry on by themselves. So then I'm 11. I have the keys to my own apartment. My mother and her boyfriend, I'm trying not to use their names.
Yeah, indeed.
Right? He's right from Harlem. And I have these two very different worlds going on. So when you ask me my story, I say, like, what do you think is happening to a kid like me from a divorced home with not a lot of money and a father who has a substance abuse problem with a woman who doesn't like the daughter around? Like, this kid is feeling a lot of things, you know, and some of them are not very positive, but then I got a lot of freedom as a teenager, and my life was my own, really, and I was precocious enough to know.
I love that word. I've always loved the word precocious. I love
good
that word.
Yeah.
Love
so, and precocious is a interesting word because it really showed, like, the kid like me, I already knew how to take care of myself when I was 12 years old. So I was running the streets 12, 13, 14, 15. I did everything you're not supposed to do before the age of 18 years old. I was really on my own, and could have gotten into a lot of trouble. And I did manage to keep a B- average. That was my precociousness, where if it was a tell to my mother, if you didn't have a high enough grade, something was wrong. And if I just stayed B-, I'd slide by, and I did. So I got into college, and I went to State University at Fredonia in New York, near Buffalo. And I went up to college, like big hair, 86, big hair, my own gold chain, smoked Newports, right? And I was like in an all-girls dorm my first year. The girls were like in flannel nightgowns, they set their hair in curlers, they were teddy bears, and they were like very different kind of person to me. And I had a real culture shock, but I made it through those 4 years, and when I came out, I was like, you know what? I got a message for kids. Like, I was a theater major, and I was like, I'm gonna teach acting and like theater games to kids for leadership and self-esteem, because I think kids need to know that they have choices. And I didn't make some of those choices growing up. Like, my teenage years, I'm not coming from a place of like, oh my God, feel sorry for me. I'm coming from a place of like, I did some things that were really dangerous. And if I had a little bit more help here or there, maybe it would have been different for me, because I was really fighting being alone, not feeling loved, and at times really painful, so I was really acting out. I was a bully, I fought, I hurt people, physically.
So how did your upbringing, and thank you for sharing that and being transparent, how did that upbringing prepare you to not only just to create the Kid Grit organization and books and things that you're doing, but how did it prepare you for life? And then I want you to talk about the company that you guys started then.
All those lessons, all those lessons are life opportunities for learning, right? Like, even the worst times, pain, things that you struggle with, being down and out. If you're an educator, you look at it and go, what did I learn from that? What did I learn, right? I'm always a learner, right? What is it? I'm always a student. And so I've been very independent most of my life, and I've been able to do things for myself most of my life. So those skills where I felt victimized before, like, oh my God, no one's paying attention to me, my father doesn't love me, I'm just gonna get mad and do drugs, or, that switches to look at how many skills I have now because I had to raise myself. And so that's really, we say, like, that's my why. Like, why do I do what I do and work with youth and create programs so that you can thrive and feel important and feel seen and feel heard and feel valued and go to college or have a career? It's because I felt like I didn't really know those choices, and I want kids to feel like and understand that they too can have an opportunity, even when it's painful, not to be victimized by it, but to be able to grow from it.
What didn't young Julia receive that you're seeing that young students that you're coming across aren't receiving, and how are you fulfilling that need that you didn't get, and you're seeing the same thing with the young people that you come across?
Mm-hmm. So that's a good question, because when we present a lot of things that we talk about, if I tell my story, I'll ask a group of educators, well, what do you think Julia needed? What was going on? And they'll say, she needed love, she needed family, she needed structure, she needed discipline. And I say, aside from technology and social media today, do you think that kids need the same thing that Julia needed 50 years ago? And everybody in the room goes, yeah. And I'm like, so the way that kids feel when these things happen, or their circumstances happen, is the exact same way. Feelings are feelings. So we have to come up with new ways as educators all the time to engage them so that we're current, and now we have to deal with the digital and social media consciousness and kind of awareness, which is something that we do really well too.
So now you've taken your entire story, and I just did a show on the power of stories, so thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about Kid Grit.
Okay.
Let's talk about the creation. Let's talk about the name. Let's talk about the logo. Let's talk about what you're doing. You can start wherever you want to go. Let's start with the name Kid Grit.
Okay. So I have a partner. You mentioned him before. You interviewed him, Jeffrey Jordan.
Shout out to Jeff. Hey.
Jeffrey. And he is a certified holistic wellness coach. And we knew each other from childhood in a way that we didn't hang out, but he was playing in the parks.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have hung out with Jeff either. I'm like, we're friends now, but we did not, be real clear, we did not hang out together.
Yeah. But we were playing in neighboring parks when we were growing up, or hanging out. I don't know if I was playing, I was hanging out in parks.
Like how you cleared that up.
Yeah, he was a ball player.
I don't see too many people playing in New York. I see people in the parks. I see them hanging out. So thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah. And so we kind of knew of each other. We were Facebook friends, and I was in a bad way in one of my last jobs, and I had saw his posts on Facebook, and he was running those groups. You always see those happy groups, those gratitude groups. I was like, what's going on? Like, he said things like, what's happening, soul family? And that just appealed to me. And so I reached out to him and said, Jeff, what are you doing? You know, and he said, oh, I'm a certified holistic wellness coach. I said, what the heck is that? Like, holistic wellness coach, you know? I had a life coach before, and I've had a ball coach before, but so he told me what he was doing. He was working with adults and families on wellness through mind, body, and spirit. And I thought, that's beautiful. I would like that. Like, I've already had a lot of therapy. I don't need any more therapy, but I want to try this life coach with wellness. And so we started working together, and he also used to have a kids organization.
So when you said starting to work together, did he become your coach?
Yes.
Oh, so he became your coach?
Yes.
Okay.
And he was working with me. We were doing it virtually through Zoom, right? He was in New Jersey. I was in Los Angeles. We were meeting once a week. And I would say in the Zoom session, maybe around the 6th session, he said, man, I know you're not happy with the work you're doing right now, but I love the way you talk about kids and how you work with them. He said, I wish I was still doing it. I said, and I threw it out. I said, oh my God. I said, take your mind, body, and spirit stuff and make it into a kid's curriculum. And he looked at me, and in that moment, LaMarr, zzz, like energy through the interweb, we're staring at each other. He goes, I don't know much about writing curriculum, but I love what you said. And I said, I know how to write curriculum. I'm a youth development specialist. So we took the best of both of us. We took his kind of wellness and mindfulness and my youth development, social emotional learning background, and we made a program. And while we were developing it, I went looking online for wings. Like, I was like, because he had a logo from his company that was a lotus flower that looked like wings, and I have angels all over my apartment, true story. They're everywhere, they're hidden, and you see them because I've had a lot of angels in my life. And we took that logo and we found an image that was kind of the best of both of who we were in an image. And we talked about kid and grit and then angel wings, like what that really meant. Like, we're working with kids, so we're kid-centered, that's the focus. And then grit is something that you hear educators say, man, my kids are not resilient. Like, they give up so easy. You know, they're very entitled, or they're very apathetic.
Are you talking about my own children? I feel some judgment. You talking about the Shields kid?
I don't know them, but Jeffrey's a really good coach. Yes, but a lot of people, and it doesn't matter what background you come from anymore, this is a big problem with our kids. Like, they're just really apathetic and entitled, and it's not about
Where does that come from? And were you like that with your story?
No, you would never think that I was, and you know, I think when I was growing up, entitlement for poor folks, right? Like, I mean, entitled were for rich folks, and so now, though, what I'm saying is that kids come from all different classes and races, and they're entitled. They feel like the world owes them something. Like, they walk around
So
like...
where do you think that that's coming from in your work?
I think it comes from technology and access to information.
So access to technology... you think parents play a role in entitlement?
I think the lack of parenthood.
So the lack of authentic parenting.
Yeah, parents who are uneducated or grew up pissed off or angry about something, like, you know, it's like, get what you can, you know, or just look out for me right now, you know, ourselves, our family, it's our little block, instead of the world, and opening up the blinders and thinking of community as a family. I think that poor parental guidance can have an impact, but I really think that the basis of is if devices become babysitters, if devices become the information that you get and you don't know how to decipher if it's true or not, and you see people on YouTube who are influencers and they're 16 years old and they get rich quick, the message for our children who don't have enough guidance is you could do that too, and why do you have to go to school or continue your education or work hard for anything when other people are getting rich quick? Like, that's the message. I don't believe it's true, but I think that's what they see.
So when we first started, Julie, you talked about solutions, being solution-oriented. What solutions does the Kid Grit curriculum work that you and Jeffrey do? Let me back up. What problem are you all trying to solve? And then I think solutions sort of come out of that.
Wow, that's such a good question, because I feel like there's so many problems, and it's so different for every educational community, LaMarr. We're hired by districts to do special work intervention with English learners or Native families, where they're doing our activity and our approach with 5-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and parents in the same household. Recently, we've been asked to work with transitioning foster youth. And so what problem we're trying to solve? I think it's really about building communication skills with families. And then it's really like a self-awareness and an empathy that we want young people to have, so that when they are faced with controversy or dilemmas or challenges, that they can understand how they feel in those moments and then learn strategies on how to overcome anything that's stopping them from being successful.
So how can our listeners get in contact with you to book you for speaking engagements, reading your books, want to bring you on their podcasts and shows? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
I think our website does a good job, www.kid-grit.com or info@kid-grit.com.
So Julia, it's been amazing to talk to you, to really sit down with you, to hear your story. And thank you for just being transparent and sharing that story. We don't know whose life is going to be changed by you being that transparent about how you ended up where you were and what you're doing right now. And I'm sure the kids that you're coming across and the educators that you're coming across are really, really excited. So thank you for the work that you and Jeffrey do. And I love to see your partnership. You have a beautiful, amazing website. I love the wings. I love the concept. So I wish you much success. So thank you for joining me today.
So humbled and honored for this opportunity. Thank you so
Take care.
much.
Got you. Peace.